Alright. Hey, I'm Aqua, or Aquarius of Fallen Snow if you don't know me. Welcome to this episode of the Shootin Gallery podcast. Welcome back if you've been here before. This is an episode with somebody I met recently. He's got great energy. His name's Bjorky. That's what he goes by on Discord. He has different ads for Instagram and stuff, so I'll make sure they're in the description so you can find them. But honestly, it was a great conversation. I'm disappointed because looking back in the recording, I realized I messed up a little bit, and some of the levels weren't as equal as they could have been, even after trying to equalize them with the program I used. It still had some issues picking up my microphone, which I thought it would pick it up. I was seeing it move on the screen, but not loud enough. Obviously, I think I need to boost my mic a little bit. But yeah, this was a great conversation I had with Bjorky. Hopefully, the audio, like, this is all a learning experience, and I'm learning every podcast I do, so hopefully in the subsequent podcasts, in the coming episodes, the audio will be fixed, and I'll have my eye on it, better monitoring it, and make sure that, even before it goes through the program to level stuff out, it's closer to even. So yeah, I apologize for that. It's very frustrating, especially from my end, when I try to do all the things to make it work and then it just resets and I forget, oh yeah, I have to redo my audio settings, my mic settings. I have to redo my camera settings every time. And it's getting to be annoying on that side, but I love doing the podcast and I love talking to people and having these conversations. So I'm going to keep going with that and, hopefully keep recording, maybe even get a better recording software or get a subscription to OBS if it has it. I don't know. We'll see. But trying to do this for the least amount of money as possible because I don't make any money from it. I think I've made $8 total from my music over like the 5 or 6 years I've been doing this, and I didn't start monetizing until like 2 or 3 years ago. So like halfway through what I've been making so far. So it's not really the most profitable yet. So we're trying to do it for the least amount of money possible. But I'm just happy I can join Discords and meet new people to talk to. If you guys want my Discord or you want me to start my own Discord so we can all talk together, let me know and I'll start that up. I'll start that up ASAP and help build the community and help get people together that want to be on the podcast, or maybe they just want to see the new episodes as they come up and talk about them, or the conversations we had in the episodes. Totally cool. I would love to do that, and I think that might be a plan for the future. So look out for it. But yeah, getting back to this episode, talking with Bjorky about spirituality and religion and art and all the, like, connecting all the dots, basically. It's so nice to be able to have conversations like this where you can just be open, talk about whatever, and like it seems like it all connects because it does, because we're all source, right? And I hope that's the message I can hammer home with this podcast, is that we are all the same energy, just in different forms, in different bodies. So that's why I want to hear other people's point of view. I want to try and put myself in their shoes and understand their thinking and there's lots of philosophy to this. There's lots of psychology. There's lots of it's also the art of conversation, which is the most beautiful part. But it's like realizing we have a lot more similarities than differences, right? Why do we have to hate each other for the points of view or like the things we say when in reality, the people who say these things probably have a justification for it. I'm sure the politicians have lots of monetary incentives behind the things that they say, right? Which, uh, yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms, a whole nother conversation to be had. But before this intro gets too long, I'll cut it here. And I hope you enjoy the podcast episode. I hope you enjoy the conversation. And again, I'm sorry for the audio issues. If you do enjoy this episode of the podcast, though, make sure you subscribe because it does help build the community, and then you see all the new episodes when they're coming out, as well as the other videos I post, because I do a ton of theory videos, talking about music, the podcast episodes, all kinds of stuff, So don't miss it. My link tree will also be in the description, as well as Bjorky's links, but if you want to find my music and other socials, I'll have my link tree down there. And you can just hit that one link, the one-stop shop for all my socials and all that stuff. But yeah, before it gets too long, I love you. Stay safe, good luck, easy, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast. Peace. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of stuff they hide from us, and they just you have to like read between the lines and use reverse psychology to really get the full picture of what's going on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, uh, yeah, anything that's trying to siphon your worship to a singular point is is all the pyramid, or MLM, multi-level marketing, or lodge orders. Exactly, just putting one person at the tippy top, the pyramid, or the one guy that's calling the shots.
I always was wondering about that, especially comparing it to the Ten Commandments, where it says don't have idols, but like to respect your mother and father. And I wonder, like, do you know the correlation and how that ties into like Christianity in the mainstream, maybe? Like,
Yeah, yeah. So it's like the manipulation of a paradox of the I am paradox, right? So like if it's kind of the centering around the Bible, you can't change any of the words of the Bible. So how would you manipulate a text that can't be manipulated, right? Essentially, without having eternal, you know, threats or damnation put upon you. It would be mistranslations. So it's like the mistranslations of Hebrew to English, and then like, yeah, like, uh what's the word, scarecrow. So Jesus the scarecrow, in terms of how we use that power to kind of control what the underlings are doing, right? And so you kind of take away that I amness, right? That oneness that is a psychological, you're connecting the hemispheres and then you're bridging the aether with the mother, and getting the genders confused or being completely tied to the singular archetype of a gender, or like being completely tied to a single archetype that you think you represent in the cycle, that then makes you perceive yourself that you aren't capable of all the archetypes. And so you're having to then exchange energy with all the other archetypes in order to tell the story that you are trying to convince yourself. um yeah, and so that, like, I amness with Jesus, and then his relationship with Mary, and then the metaphysical qualities that are expressed through art through the ages, and visions that millions of people have had in their interactions with Yeshua and Mary and Saint Germain and all of these enthos, and it's all kind of like you're capable of every interaction and every thought, and you're able to put yourself in a lens, or whether that be through another person's eye, or just like you can be a coffee mug, if you ever take right, and that's like the salvia. You take salvia and you can become an inanimate object forever, or like what would be perceived as forever, and then you come back down into the density. But yeah.
yeah, and I think there's a level of withholding information as well, and that also skews skews the perception and our ideas of what is. Because especially in something like Christianity, I think of like the difference of the King James Bible to like if you had the whole thing, every bit of text you can get and truly compiled it, how the story might seem different in its entirety and the messaging and all this. Like I definitely relate to what you were saying about like focusing too much on the one archetype or your characteristics. Like so many people are distracted by the ego, and then you lose that sense of source and the hum and like, oh yeah, it is all just me in different forms. And I feel like that could be why people do see Jesus, or they do see the Greys or whoever, because however you ask to see the source, in a sense, if you're asking for a message or to communicate with it, it will produce a form. But then also every other person you can talk to in the world is another form, right? It's
Mhm.
maybe the purity of the message or whatever it is. Like if there's less ego in between, less like static communicating through radio waves. Maybe there's less
Yeah,
static talk. And
yeah.
that makes me wonder, what do you think about the idea of cracker and the wine or the juice and saying that's like the skin and the blood of Jesus, and then using the symbol of the crucifix or the cross as like a symbol for him, but that's also what he was crucified on. Wonder your thoughts on that, and do you think there is some level of them, like you said, maybe not misinterpreting, but twisting it in a way to give the wrong message or to get people's attention in the wrong place, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I think there's alchemy in like the misinterpretation of what the cross, represents on many dimensional levels, right? And then, whether it be the crucifix, it could be like trauma associated to like the, the crucifixion, right? And then you're associating that geometry, that symbol, with the both simultaneously, like the fulfillment of the Lord, and the redemption of the blood, and then also the trauma of you know getting martyred. So it's like both these things are capable of being observed, and like, yeah, it's weird. There's so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Almost like a representation of the duality of existence.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so if everything is happening all at the same time, right? Like, then the observer quality would determine what the observer would be, viewing. So, like, you can always perceive an infinite amount of transgressions. So, you can always find what someone else is doing to you that is in the wrong. And you can center your focus around that and then build all your arguments around the transgressions, or the traumas, and then base all of your actions on this traumatized kind of state, where like uh artistically, uh it's like Da Vinci painted the Last Supper, right? And that was more of the mathematical quality that he had scried, he had channeled. He had found all the apostles around Jesus, Jesus in the center, and then like the body of Jesus is more, it ties into my work with Last Supper overlays, and then now with Robert Grant posting all his Last Supper overlays, and all the Da Vinci paintings line up because he uses the same Da Vinci. I forget the Da Vinci design box, which is
Isn't it
just
also triangle or the golden ratio, maybe?
yeah. So I did a lot of studying about like the golden ratios and just like the influence the Last Supper had, or more like the geometrical and geographical truth that the Last Supper holds, just within the momentum of the lines and then the color associations and his head tilt and the star associations to all the apostles. But like, and then literally the chamber of the Last Supper is proportionate to the king's chamber. And so Robert Grant is finding like that Da Vinci was outlining constellations on the back wall that are also found on in the texture of the actual the king's chamber.
Right.
So that was something that I had discovered myself about a year ago, because I began to see like using like some mirroring and overlaying of the Last Supper. I was like, okay, I'm seeing a bullhead, I'm seeing a lion, there's a calf inside the bull, there's a Mercury sign above Jesus's head, there's so many things, and then on behind Jesus on the wall, there's the Eye of Ra is above Jesus. So I, just overlaying on every kind of map, I found that a upside down reversed France pretty much lines up exactly with the shape of Jesus. And then also Walla Walla, Washington, and Washington State. There's a big Jesus, there's a big Yeshua that lines up with the Last Supper. So yeah, so right at the third eye center of which would be Walla Walla, Washington, would line up directly to Yeshua's third eye center, and then like it's big, so it's like the whole West Coast. You can overlay Jesus, and then it like this momentum matches from Walla Walla, Washington down and follows his arm, and it's one arm is would be the land, and the other arm would be in the sea or the ocean.
Oh, and then that leads to, like we were talking about with Aquarius, 1 foot in,
Yeah,
1 foot out, and guys, holy shit, that's so
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Well, and you said something earlier that made me think of the idea of forgiveness and the fact that it's not like, sorry, I want to bring this back a little bit, but the idea of forgiveness, or the definition, is not to be okay with what somebody did, or not to endorse it in any way, but to let go of the anger and the resentment towards the person and have understanding. So I wonder if it is, in a sense, we were talking about the crucifix. I wonder if it is, in a sense, to represent having understanding and showing, like, yes, Jesus was martyred, but it was in the name of preaching the message that he was trying to get out to people, which was like unity, and like seeing the connections, like you're talking about, between like the Last Supper and the pyramids and all this stuff, because you can see the synchronicities everywhere in life. You just have to have your eyes open and be really wanting to see it, because that's how so many people get lost in the distraction of life and being like, oh, there's no magic, there's no God, there's no whatever you want to say. But it's like, okay, if you have that perspective, life's going to be pretty shitty, because you're not going to be open to receiving those signals or those frequencies. So I think it's absolutely beautiful what you said in terms of the fact that you found that, you were able to find that, but it's also because you were looking and you were open to seeing what the universe was offering to you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I there's a Last Supper that is at Forest Lake in Glendale, which is a Tartarian cathedral, essentially, that Walt Disney and his father are buried at. Um, which will probably be important if we get to that point. But the where was I going with that? Yeah, but they have a Last Supper that when I first started, literally, I walked into that Forest Lake Cathedral and I had like a negative physical reaction. And I didn't know why I did at that point, but it was because it's a replica. It's trying to use that image as like a selling point instead of like the actual like person that came in studying geometry, scrying Jesus in the cathedral. It was more like copy paste into this cathedral, right? And then there's a whole thing with the there's no food on Jesus's plate in the original Last Supper, and in that one there's a dead fish.
Ugh.
So it's like they were, they probably weren't eating in whatever ceremonial situation where Jesus was scrying. They were definitely fasting. You know what I mean? And fasting's the whole important part of the Jesus narrative and the Jesus arc. Um, but yeah, so I just opened up Photoshop and I just started to stare at it for a long time. And then I do a lot of mirroring, a lot of overlays, and the same proportions that are in Jesus's design are found in the $100 bill with Benjamin Franklin and the $1 bill with George Washington. So there's a bit of like Im like geometrical truth that whoever minted the dollar bills incorporated, right? And I think that kind of ties into the obsessive nature that we can have around just the image of the dollar is using these proportions that will inevitably lead you to the high priestess, the divine feminine, who is like the intelligence behind natural curvature and momentum lines and like the it's the three sisters that are the thread weavers of the different aspects of our reality, right? And it's like, yeah, the visions of Sophia. So Sophia's in Gnostic, Sophia's the divine mother that is the grander intelligence behind the thread weavers. So there's a guy called Dan Winter. He's been talking about this Nostradamus and John Dee and like scrying and how that influenced politics. And he talked a lot about vortex mechanics and piezoelectrics and the effects of theta waves and gamma waves in meditation states and like ancestor phone calls, biolocation, like uh yeah, like telepathy, seeing without children are able to see while being blindfolded, like roller skate while being blindfolded in this. Yeah, so like this is all stuff that has been researched and understood for a long time. uh especially the effects that it has on children that aren't, pursuing the meditative states, right? Or that have been disconnected. That's kind of Dan Winter talks about, like, you're stealing the soul, it's like stealing souls essentially.
Yeah,
And I think that's kind of where culture's at the moment. Or, we're beginning to crawl out of the muck, which is that aspect.
absolutely. I hope. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that we are starting to crawl out of it, and I hope more people are starting to wake up and realize that. But everything you're talking about, yeah, it would make sense if they're trying to harvest souls or like harvest the negative energy, loosh farm or whatever it is with these churches and cathedrals. And we were talking about it last night or the night before, but the fact that they have all these graveyards right next to the church or the cathedral, whatever it is. So you go and you mourn and you feel like shit talking to your past ones, even though in reality they're in the eternal now and they're with you all the time. So it's not, they really only left the physical. But then thinking about that and how they're already changing the message and in some of these places, the artwork in these places. So it's like, I feel like they are trying to take advantage of good people's nature and them trying to go and like, I don't know. I feel like maybe the sense of community coming together, if you can bring that positive energy, hopefully we can all channel that and resonate it, but it makes me wonder about organized religion and like you said the meditative state. Like why don't we teach what you were mentioning in anatomy class or in science class? Like it might not be, well, and like you said there were studies done, so there is some um, proof to it. So why can't we even just mention it in a class and say like, hey, this is what they want us to teach, I'm gonna throw this in because it's just as valid and it like opened people's eyes to it. The school system, organized religion, almost anything we see today, it's all focused on money
Mhm.
and the heat of it all. So like it's so sad. I wish we could. I hope we can get to a, like we had that real renaissance, that resonance renaissance. Saw somebody mentioning Cat Dad's chat yesterday. That would be so beautiful to bring the math back to the art and really like, yeah. All right, I'm having like I'm almost having a download because in school I loved art and I always took art classes every year because I could and I thought they were fun and they were also pretty easy. But I never wanted to learn the art history because there was an aspect of my there was a thought in my head that was like, oh, it's before my time. It's not relevant today at all. But the stuff they were trying to say in the art is universal and eternal and it's cyclical, like you're gonna see it everywhere anyways. So I think it was a point of like maybe I wasn't even ready to have the realizations of what they were trying to tell me yet. So my brain, like a source in a way, was saying, "Don't even worry about it yet. You're not gonna appreciate it." And now I'm at the point where we're talking. I'm like, "Holy shit! I get it. I appreciate it. Like that's so beautiful. That's amazing." Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That was so one of my, like, discoveries. Just my alchemical discoveries was that Da Vinci was alchemizing himself into his paintings, and then the progression of paintings is kind of the alchemization of his divine feminine unveiling. He does, and all this stuff, like, through Salvador Mundi. It has contains some very deep alchemical tie-ins to how to meditate and what to meditate. It's like Salvador Mundi almost solves the three body problem, uh, and that's because he has a crystal, or they have a crystal orb that has three dots on it, and that ties into a lot of it ties into essentially the thelemite, A, therefore A, therefore. And that's a symbol that Aleister Crowley used on a lot of his sigil work. And, the development of AA is almost based off of that alchemical principle. So it's like AA is almost reverse engineered from alchemical principles to get people to begin to inhabit this self, the I am.
Like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And sorry, in what sense, like trying to, yeah, could you explain that concept more?
Yeah. So if you think of so Aether, like it ties into Aether mechanics, right? So Aether being AETHER, AE, you have that combination symbol that is AE that's combined together. That's like that goes back to alchemists using uh, that to center the vision. So my work with toroidal physics of the vision, the visual system, where you have essentially two, right? You have two eyes that are both collecting light at the same time, but that data combines from the two eyes. So that combination is predictable, and that's how I've been able to dissect Aether mechanics. So AE, you think if matter would propagate from that form of light colliding in the eyes, then like phonetics plays a role in how the Aether movement would then, vortex. So like the Eiffel Tower being a very deep alchemical device, because Eiffel, the guy who designed it, was a super advanced alchemist, and there's a reason. There's a reason why he was the the guy living in the Eiffel Tower, and it has to go to like the etheric pressure that crowds would have around the city as they would look up. And so the shape of the Eiffel Tower, you can dissect A and E would propagate.
Shit, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, and so that form is just a more fundamental mathematical principle of what the Last Supper is showing with Jesus in the center.
The Eiffel
And
Tower, sorry, it's kind of a modern day pyramid in a sense.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, it kind of represents a shift in culture, too, and also uh, just a side note with the Olympics and the whole weirdness around that Last Supper Dionysus kind of skit that was played out in front of the Eiffel Tower in the background. Like
Yeah.
it's all they understand this mechanic and then do things to pervert it or invert it or
Yeah.
divert the intention or underplay the importance of the symbol.
Yeah. And then everybody was getting all upset at them. Just a major form of loose farming, and then like everybody's seeing the Eiffel Tower, even though they're not there in person, they're still consciously thinking about it. Because I can see it
Mhm.
in my head right now, picturing the video, like, holy shit, man.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would argue that it's the same mechanics for like football games or public, public gatherings. Even if you're watching on the screen, you're still the same geometry and advertisements, logos.
Yeah. And it's all it's not circles. They always
Mhm.
have it in an elongated circle, like an oval. And isn't that to do with? I remember seeing something about the old architecture, sorry, probably from Tartarian stuff, where they would have that shape. And if you stood in the center, where a circle would be on one side, where it would be on the other, how the how your voice reflects off the walls, you could hear even somebody whispering from this center point over here because everything bounces back to that point. So yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. Oh my
yeah.
god.
It's all about energy collapse, and then if you have the performer, i.e., Taylor Swift, who is like the big diversion feminine archetype, or Beyonce, the queen bee.
This year Kendrick Lamar. Oh my fucking god. And
So
I sorry
yeah,
to I gotta take it somewhere. I had the thought today, and I don't want to be a fucking conspiracy theorist and it's call everyone a fed, but I was thinking, I was like, the amount Cat Dad talks about Kendrick, is it possible that the label, Top Dog Entertainment, let him a bit of money? Hey, just pump this up and promote it because this is your community. It's all spiritual. It's all this kind of stuff. But the messaging or that it's still trying to farm the energy in a sense. And I don't want to like say, oh, Kendrick's a bad guy or it's not this or that. But I seen a creator, I also think is a fed because he's kind of kind of making himself seem like it. But his name's Izzy Griffith. But he was talking about how the Kendrick and Drake thing could go a lot deeper into the Freemason world of the two sides and the two pillars of light and the dark and like oh my
yeah,
god, the level that he took it to, I was thinking like holy shit, maybe it's not even about this shit at all. It's like you said, on such a deep level that they understand, but they never tell us, they never show us. We have to figure it out for ourselves, and then when you see through the smoke and mirrors, oh my god.
yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, I know Izzy. I've seen some of his Drake and Kendrick stuff, and definitely the Drake stuff with the Mason, the Masonic kind of tie-ins, and then that small person in the wheelchair. I don't know his name, but has some weird tie-ins to cloning, is what uh that whole that Izzy, I think, even talks about. I don't know how far he goes into the cloning thing, but definitely the Masonic tie-ins. Um, and that's all just to have Drake's music to shop to, and kind of the attention Drake gets,
Yeah.
the amount of money that, you know,
Sorry, you mentioned the kid in the person in the wheelchair. Imagine if that was a Drake clone or vice versa, and that's what they were trying to tell us with Degrassi, that there was some sort of incident and Drake is actually or like wheelchair or something like that. Oh my god, man. You're just spitballing and it's like blowing my mind because I'm connecting the dots and the synchronicities, but yeah, on and then okay, relating this to Tyler the Creator's album because part of the beef with Kendrick and Drake was calling him out for being a p word and not not being the best person, all that stuff. But then I look at Tyler the Creator's album that dropped recently, and it's called Chromacopia. So not only referencing the cornucopia and the Greek god of color or whatever, chromium or something like that, like it could be a reference to that. But then their advertising and marketing had to do with shipping containers and um the adrenochrome, possibly referring to the vampires, the vampiric qualities of the fucking lizard people. And then the color green was heavily associated with that, which you could associate with nature, but it's also heavily associated with like envy and greed and all like gross. Holy shit! So I wonder if they're obviously all in the same clubs or the same like they all network together. They're at that level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, the cornucopia tie-in I've been thinking about a lot with the what's his name? Tyler, Tyler the Creator, right? And so if you think of Mandela effects, you hear the fruit of the loom Mandela effect, and that's they literally just take out the cornucopia that was in their logo.
Yep.
And it's because the cornucopia represents the like geometrical like principle, but also like the endless giving of the mother, the endless kind of fruit that the mother bears because of this endless love that is our connection to Gaia. And there are some more alchemical, like deeper alchemical geometries that represent the cornucopia that, you know, will that I'm working on. It's a work in progress, but like it's in there. Like I found it in the ether, you know what I mean?
That's awesome. I can't wait to like see what you've been researching and like you said it's a book then?
So I have a method of scrying, Enochian scrying, right? Uh,
Does that look like, sorry, because I'm not familiar.
so it's essentially being able to find these higher aspects in the textures, right? It's like I found how Da Vinci centers himself on the painting and then allows divine feminine aspects. This is like this is the meditation. So I'm able to come out of the darkness of my association to all these symbols that I was told have no significance or just kind of, fairy tale, aspects to explain aspect of the nature of the world when the actual geometry of that figure is playing a role in the render system of the the geometrics in front of you. So I'm able to find within my Da Vinci box and then centering circle, finding astrological signs, and then they associate naturally. And as I take my time, I can then grid, I can find Yeshua, and then I can find an even more realistic face, and then a more realistic face. And as I keep just using my technique, I'm able to like find the yeah, the entities, right? The personalities.
Yeah.
So like that takes a long time to actually like grid it out, but definitely like my sigil making 2.0, which is what Da Vinci was doing with, with his work, was alchemizing himself as the, observer archetype and then injecting his personality. As the Last Supper, it would have been Judas is who he painted himself as. So, and yeah.
Sorry. Well, I was gonna say, have you seen that video of the guys? I think it's on DMT or acid or something, but looking at the laser on the wall, and they were seeing like the code within it, and they were all seeing the same thing. I wonder if they were scrying through the light of the laser. That be?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's ways to make the scrying accessible, you know, and to display, just like Da Vinci painted, he did the work to pull that information down, right? And then you can view it on that 2D level. You can view it at any level that you're capable of, right? But it is based off of etheric grids, and movement of the stars, and kind of that's the crystallization, and that is the arc of that astrological information. You're arcing to the observer. You're bringing down that information to be connecting those dots for others.
Right. Even connecting that to the picture of, man and God, and their fingers are so close.
Hmm.
Don't even need to be touching, really, if you can arc, that connection, like you think of electricity. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's such
and
an,
then
or it's
the
such an incredible concept, and like, it's amazing that you were able to start that. But
yeah, well, the Michelangelo thing, Robert Grant talks about that as well. It's like that is a diagram of a that's a diagram of a brain. So each angel, each archetype represents and follows like a layout of the human brain. So like
oh, and that would relate to the idea of the pineal gland, the brain stem, and the like connection between like the different chakras, right? Chakras.
yeah,
Um, oh my God, yeah. And how I've seen people say how it's man that needs to lift his finger because God is all the way extended, and it's on you to make that connection yourself. You can't like God is already there. He's waiting for you to reach out to him in that sense, right?
yeah, yeah. It's also like as the observer, you'll never be able to take your brain and look at it without some kind of malformation or dysfunction happening. You know what I mean? So like, and that's like purely observer quality. Whereas like as the observer, yeah, without like you can X-ray it, but that's like lens through a screen. So through optics and manipulation of energy, you can get a diagram and you can dissect all the parts of the body, which essentially what Da Vinci was doing as well with understanding muscle fibers and animal proportions and feminine eye versus masculine eye, or finding the shapes within shapes, right? And that's kind of the pursuit of aether and the ability we have as humans to infinitely dissect information and find infinite correlations within a single subject. Uh, but that's all just kind of pulling you out of the now, where everything in front of you can be displayed all at once. And that's kind of the headspace behind John Dee or Nostradamus scrying, or any kind of you know defined feminine interaction or vision.
So yeah, that painting, it's called the Michelangelo, with the man and God in the cloud with.
I I I don't even know what cathedral that's in, but Michelangelo was the artist.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's as I talk about, like, yeah, I study art. I don't even know what they
Oh,
refer
it's
to
good.
that as the classic one,
I
and it's
always.
in the yeah
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say I always forget if it's the Vehuvian man or the Vitruvian man, but it's with a T, right?
yeah Vitruvian.
Yes. Okay. I wrote Vehuvian on my art exam the one year, and my teacher had to read it out to the class and kind of roast me because it's like, come on, you didn't remember that? So that kind of triggers in my head every time. Makes me laugh. Ah,
Yeah,
the creation of Adam.
yeah,
So in that painting, because Adam has such a relaxed nature about him, and he has his arm out and it's relaxed. In a sense, I wonder if that is him spectating creation, everything. Like he's watching, he's looking at God, whether he realizes that God is there in the cloud with the cherubs or not. Everything he can see is God, right? He himself is God. And I wonder if that then is the lifting of the finger moment, the aha, in a sense, like having the download and the realization that it all clicks, like, oh yeah, it's me, it's everything. Like, wow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, like it's kind of like a representation of the geometrical inversion that would be like from the physical body to the Godhead, and then that the interplay, even if we don't recognize what's in front of us, it's still that kind of reflection, that the Godhead reflection, as above, so below, like the three in one.
Yeah, absolutely. Representing the duality, both like literally and metaphorically, and then the connection between the two, and it, oh, yeah. They knew what they were doing back then. Holy smoke.
Yeah. And you know, it's becoming more believable as we continue to learn the etheric, this method of scrying that also ties into how people could, or why pictographs that the natives are associated to also are depicting these, you know, larger pulled out kind of aspects of their reality at the time, or the patterns that they follow, or it's kind of like the importance of animal figures too, that ties into like animal totem, and then the geometries, the stacking geometries of the animal faces that point us to different energy centers and realities. And that's why, like, with the chakra system, different animals are associated to the different points.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like we were talking about one night on call, I wonder if that relates to what they talk about with like your spiritual journey or facing your fears in a sense of, I think they were taking psychedelics and whether they were literally seeing the animal figures or whether it was like the representation of the emotion or whatever they have to learn in that moment. I think it has a lot to do with it, and that's why you can see the same thing with like Buddhism or in the Eastern side of the world. How, it's different forms, but the same. It's all from source, and it just represents different aspects of the perception and of life, right?
Yeah.
But I'm super interested to learn like what got you into scrying? Was it just meditating and then it evolved into that over time? Like,
Yes. I mean, I last year I went through a whole initiation around the winter solstice, so it's almost been a year. Uh, but yeah, it was like, uh, I was fascinated with the idea that the Eye of Ra was in the background on the, behind Jesus, and then that momentum line was also something I was able to grid to the map. But then it was like one day I just started to see that same momentum of that, the Eye of Ra, the Eye of Horus, and then I was like, oh, like I've always have had this kind of, way of like, there's always someone watching, there's always an infinite amount of beings that could be watching at any moment, so like targeted focus. But I didn't actually like, that didn't realize itself until like I really started to work on my meditation. I I had a lazy eye my whole life, so I kind of like have gone through stages of like just completely ignoring my lazy eye, and then dealing with compensation aspects that happen where I'm only using one eye or like only doing things with my right hand, you know. So I began to practice ambidextrous sort of practices. And then I have this whole eye meditation and color breathing and kind of the synesthesia of breath and the oscillations of light between the hemispheres of the brain. And that's where, like, this is a Vajra. I'll drop that. It's a Vajra. So, like, finding where I center my eyes over a Vajra, right? And then also sun gazing, right? And getting over the fear of the whole narrative that staring at the sun is going to make you blind, where staring at the sun is like charging that visual etheric battery to give light to that subconscious to then render in the threads of, of the textures and then this kind of etheric connection. Um, but yeah, I had a whole intense, like, that's when I started to have my, like, different entities pop into my field and start to just show me aspects of this alchemical process and biblical story tie-ins uh, to how and why things are currently. And yeah, that was all through methods of fasting, structuring water, meditating in a conductive field. I build my own uh, quartz amplifiers so I can program specifically the type of frequency that the piezoelectric of the quartz is emitting. So I can dial that in and tune it to all kinds of health benefits. There's a ton of research around rifing. So uh, these are all frequencies that are associated to illnesses and different conditions that can be aided with specific electromagnetic frequencies. So so I built my own kind of, well, it's a crystal amplifier, so it's like oscillating electrical pulses over a crystal that get propagated out into the 5G and Wi-Fi ranges, and also design of this amplifier that takes the chaotic ambient frequencies that are being created from phones and cell towers and Wi-Fi, and then structures that to that frequency as well. So like spatial conditioning for meditation, and that's where like cathedrals come in, or pyramids and other kind of conductive surfaces that would have been used in ancient times that also follow these same principles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and same with like jed pillars or the bin stones, or plasma propagation. The dendrolites. Uh, it's all telling us, showing us like the uses of the caduceus, which is the staff of Hermes, which is the the uh, coherence between the left and the right hemispheres, or the duality, the interplay between divine feminine and divine masculine, and then trying to embody that in my story as best as I can, like trying to. But yeah, it was like the first time, especially dealing with like your imaginary friends that you forgot about and then reconnected with. It's very much like uh, yeah, it's like raising a child again for like a few weeks. It's like raising a metaphysical child.
Like
Is this?
within yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and what you were saying there with finding the frequency to heal an illness,
Hmm.
that sounds a lot like what Joe Dispenza was talking about, because my girlfriend's really into his work, and she was telling me about his story and how he got in an accident. I think he was riding a bike and got hit by a vehicle, but and he had issues with his spine. I think the doctors told him he'll never walk again, or he'll never, like, he might have been paralyzed, but he was able to like use his consciousness and the vibrations, I guess, to heal himself, and now he can walk and run and ride his bike again, do whatever. But it's like just hearing that, and same with Dr. Jack Cruz talks about the same concept of being able to regenerate your bones and your limbs. Like if we could tap into the right frequency, could we literally just grow our arms back like you see what's the lizard doctor in Spider-Man? I forget. It's
I know
not
what you're
Killer
talking about.
Croc. Yeah, it's, or is it Killer Croc? No, Killer
Might
Croc's
be.
Batman. That's, yeah, sorry, I'm getting lost in the sauce now, but yeah,
All good.
that's absolutely astonishing. And it's just it goes back to the sense of like, yeah, we are source. Like it's all the same in different forms. Why can't we tap into that and say like, hey, divine mother, divine father, can I get some energy here and kind of put it into this section of my body? And like, yeah, that's so odd. So I guess a question I would have for you then is, what was it like before and after, I guess, or like how have you noticed life change since like the meditation and these realizations you had?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um, so like bone growth or building flexibility or I hadn't been like a terribly flexible person. I was into weightlifting and I was able to build muscle and stuff like that, but definitely flexibility has never been one of my strong suits. So like getting into yoga was like you got to humble yourself because I'm like you know you're going to hurt yourself if you overdo it. If you're not building the flexibility, you're going to build the calcification. So that's more of how I see the calcification of the pineal gland, or kind of the at different densities, whether that be the skin can change faster than the bone, faster than whatever else. But I still like I had a worst case scenario impacted wisdom teeth. And so one of my first, you know, um, like channelings where I had an gray come and present itself like through the Sephiroth, which
Mhm.
is the Sephiroth would be the grid of the chakra system that like Hebrew texts talk about, and it's more of a geometrical layout. But that's besides the point. But essentially, this entity pointed out to me that I had a permanent retainer in, and essentially, what I downloaded was I need to get the permanent retainer out to begin to actually integrate my wisdom teeth into the practice. So I've been able to undo without any intervention, undo my impacted wisdom teeth through tongue posture and through yoga and through this piezoelectric. And same with my my lazy eye, right? I've been able to undo these two things that I was told that I wouldn't have any control over, right? They took my belief that I had no, I had no uh,
Like you were
skin in the
powerless.
game. Yeah, like took my power away exactly. And so through these things and through these practices, like able to do pretty crazy things, and it's a thing with structuring water and the effect it has on the piezoelectrics of your bones and like ozone. So ozonating water and structuring it with EMFs, I'm able to get play. Like I'm able to get the teeth, and they're not all the way in yet, but like I've overcome a lot of other kind of residual pains and aches and kind of illness that I've had up to that point.
Oh, I'm glad
Yeah,
to hear it, and that's such an amazing story. I hope people are hearing this and realizing, like, holy shit, you can just heal yourself if you really put the time and energy into it, and don't
yeah,
just believe everything that's told to you in the sense of, oh, well, the doctor said I'm never going to be able to walk again, or I'll have to get my wisdom teeth. Are you sure about that? Have you tried, looking within and seeing if you have the power to change it yourself? Like,
yeah.
and oh, I was gonna relate that. Oh, it's okay. We'll let it keep flowing.
Keep it flowing. Oh, good man.
Oh, that's amazing, and I'm glad to hear that it has like have been able to feel less pain. Really, like it's obviously there was a learning process there because you had to have the pain to learn how to stop the pain,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm always saying like we're blooming into these five-dimensional realities. Like you know, if it owning that energy as if it is already yours, and then the belief behind that is the meditation as well, or going into any more high dimensional aspects or astral projecting to a specific target, or all these things you have to believe and then find, thread the needle, and the needle, you are the needle that you are threading.
Absolutely,
So the will, if there's a will, there's a way.
literally, absolutely. Or I heard somebody say, "Preach it, brother." I like that too. But you were mentioning you spent some time in LA and you were working on music engineering, you said?
Yeah, yeah, I was working. So I built touring rigs for national touring bands like Fanagram and Best Coast, and I did like Hall and Oates.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, I did a bunch of touring rigs for PRG, and then COVID hit and live touring stopped, and all that. Then I got into post production at Wildwoods and building studios, building recording studios for Westlake Pro. And so, yeah, I built a bunch of studios and podcast rooms. I did a Pokemon live broadcast studio that was in Bellevue,
Oh,
and I built a theater a I built a theater for Anthony Russo in Pasadena.
smokes, man.
Yeah, I didn't get paid enough. I didn't get paid enough, and then still lived paycheck to paycheck out there. But like, I had that experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, see, it would be nice. See, and that's my thing. If I ever get to this level where I get rapper money, whatever the hell, like just a dumb amount of money, the first thing I would want to do with that is share it with the people I either need help from or that are closest to me, more with experiences and like obviously if you need money to survive, pay you what the work is worth, right? But then also your friends and your family, try to bring them on trips or take them on experiences, not just like buy them a car or buy them a house or something. That's just like it is if they need it, absolutely. But you don't need like five Lamborghinis or whatever it is. That's just like it's redundant, right? But no, absolutely. I feel like well, that's so cool. So you've been all over the place then, eh? Like, were you traveling around doing all these projects then?
Not a ton of traveling, but all over Los Angeles. I did the Pokemon studio was the one I traveled to Washington for.
Wow.
So yeah, so I did I built the creator of Minecraft's personal studio. You know, it was that one house that he outbid Jay-Z and Beyonce on
Holy
in
shit.
in Beverly Hills. Yeah, I built that studio up. Uh I did Ice Cube studio as well. I did a
What?
renovation for Ice Cube, yeah.
What the hell? That's awesome.
Yeah.
See, what's it? 6 degrees of separation from Ice
Yeah.
Cube, and there's somebody in the channel or in the Discord that worked for SpaceX and
Yeah.
was like nudging elbows with Elon. So that's like 6 degrees of separation from him. Like, holy shit, it is a small world, I guess. But I
Yeah.
guess what what are some of the main like maybe takeaways or lessons that you learned from doing that job and having those experiences? Like maybe it was talking to people or the work you were doing, but I'm interested.
Um, honestly, I just focused on just the technical aspects, and that was kind of my life for a while was, routing, how to solder really good, building cables, designing audio layouts or workflows for specific recording studios, um, getting good at Pro Tools and troubleshooting software, and going out to help people get their stuff running again, or replacements. And so a lot of like solid client interaction, bit of sales, definitely more focused on like the design qualities, design aspects, and engineering blueprints, and uh, you know how that works, from getting products off the shelf to shipping them to the place, to figuring out the order of the build. Where do we start, how do we end, wipe our hands and go home, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I guess in a sense it could be like to really focus. I guess it to form the question another way, to give anybody listening like a some maybe mantras to live by or experience it. Like just focus on what you love, what you're doing, and it'll like it'll come back. The return on investment is there if you put your time and your energy in. Like you said, having all these major projects, it's like that is obviously a reward for the time and energy you put into it, because not anybody can just start doing this kind of work and go, okay, well, I'm going to work with some of the top people in the business. It
Yeah.
takes time to get there. So I respect that so
Yeah.
much. I hope people hear like it's not necessarily like sure there might be some luck involved in which projects you get specifically, but it's all about the dedication to whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah. I mean, I started just in audio engineering. Like, I grew up at this church, so church music really was you know the in the courage, or the experience that I needed to make that reality. So like, least paths of resistance to begin to do things then leads to the next least least resistant path. So like I began to record my own things using just the, you know, 4 input Scarlett, whatever. And, I recorded my album and showed that could actually develop producer chops, like I already had like the creative chops from playing in bands and doing creative, like jazz band and having my own bands and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all just you know, show up, throw your resumes out there, like believe in yourself. If you know you can do it, then you will do it. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's kind of like the patience behind that, and then how you don't murder yourself, to get there or to beat yourself up if you aren't there yet, or like the nowness comes into play, the meditation too, where like if it is yours, then you will have it.
Yes. And not reinforcing the lack of loss, right? Like,
Hmm.
and I feel like that is a huge part of meditation. It's not only having the idea, setting the goal and the intention, but then you have to put the time and energy into achieving that and to receiving it, right? It's not just going to come out of thin air. You're literally exchanging your energy for that energy, I feel like. You're transmuting the form, maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, alchemy. I've worked a long time in IT stuff, so I have this idea too of computer mana, which I think Corey Cat Dad talks about a lot, in terms of like so interacting with those, like the amount of respect or the amount of energy or like knowingness that you have towards stepping into a software program, or communicating with the mechanics or the machine,
And
like
treating it like it's other a different form of ourselves, like a different human, basically. Right?
right, just pragmatically approaching whatever the issue is without getting frustrated immediately or starting to blame other people or other entities around it, or just pragmatically like, all right, I'll check this cable and then I'll check
I
that cable.
I
Did
have
you?
absolutely I fall victim to this daily, just like we had before the podcast started. I don't know how it happened. I don't think moved the thing, but somehow on my end, I did mute you, or it was muted, and I don't know how it happened. But we were troubleshooting, and I was going like, "Oh well, I could hear you, and now I can't," and that's why I was so confused because I didn't move the nut. But yeah, it's literally like reflect, take some accountability, check all the things on your end, and that yes, no, but I do it all the time, and I'm sorry that it had to happen today before this. It's
No, and like sometimes the solutions to like the thing is restarting 4 different computers, even if they don't even aren't even involved, and then due to that you eventually
it's
get
troubleshoot.
bored. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like the path is there. It's not as direct as we like sometimes, but
Yeah.
you know
Well, and speaking of audio and music, I would love to hear more about like your band and I guess or first I would like to hear like what got you into that. Was it the church music primarily or were there other influences that I guess got you into both audio work and like being in a band?
yeah. Well, through church I feel like I got a good exposure to like aether flow through the collection of musicians that get together to for the purpose of amplifying the space etherically, you know and then finding the pocket with other musicians is an etheric process as well, to get the vortex smoothly spin and hit your cues and lift it up and make the energy go up. And so, like in terms of personal recording, like my one and only album essentially is an alchemical work, right? And I didn't even know that's what I was doing back then. But like I spent 2 years in this super old house. It's the oldest house in Hastings, Minnesota. And I have the whole place to myself just as like a professional squatter because I knew the family and they just wanted someone to keep the pipes warm, right? Paid to keep the pipes warm. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'll do. And so I had the space to, record drums and record everything. And so I have a 13 song album that I recorded all the parts and the pieces myself and engineered, mixed, mastered. And that was kind of like an alchemical check mark for my progression, my initiation back when I was 20 or so. But yeah, I had another more punk rock band called Funkle when I was living in Los Angeles, and they're still playing, they're still recording. Uh, but yeah, I recorded one song with those guys, and then like I had fallen into the Da Vinci thing, and then my life essentially got turned upside down just due to the more deep realizations, and then kind of I had to step back from literally everything that I understood artistically or like the pursuit of art, and how that was going to change after I was making more of these heavier realizations. And so you like try not to make that an excuse to do nothing, but like I can't continue to do make music in the same way I was making music. And I have all the protocols and the know-how of how to engineer and record, and the use it or lose it situation. But yeah, I definitely worked with a few of my friends that were rappers. I've done a few things here and there, but not a huge discography. I've got a few skeletons in my closet. I've got like 30 or 40 tracks that need to come out at some point, but like, yeah.
Well, sorry. I want to say, like, first off, I am at the exact same point right now in my musical journey where I'm getting back into trying to make new stuff, and I'm going, like, F sakes, I've had so many realizations that I want to put into the bars, and I think I can, but yeah, how do you alchemically form it? It's kind of like working with clay, right? Like, start with the clay and you put it on the wheel, and it's like you try to form it. Some days it just turns into a fucking blob and a mess. Other days you get this beautiful base, right? But it's all like, yeah, it's all when it's ready. I feel like it'll flow and it'll feel natural because that's the perfect time for it, right? But
Yeah.
what's the name of the album, and your name it's on?
Oh, yeah. The name is Giro, and the Strategic Pink.
Uh,
So
sorry, the first word.
Jiro,
Hero
and
and the heroic pink.
the Strategic.
Oh, sorry, strategic.
No,
Yes.
I'll get it. It's a mouthful, mouth's word spaghetti, but
Love it.
that's just what happened, and that'll be the only like that project has one album, and that'll probably be the only album on that project, just because of how it's associated to me. And yeah,
Well, no, I'm interested to hear your work, and I'd love for you to send me some of the skeletons you were talking about because I have a bunch that the amount of songs I have on my phone, just notes associated with beats I haven't recorded yet, And then I
Mhm.
still have like some that haven't come out yet. Oh, I know all about the whole like, yeah, sometimes the creative process is there, but you don't, it's not like the full, like, especially when you do everything alone. I feel like you have to section it in a certain way to make it work. But yeah, some days you're working on writing, other days recording days. But yeah, no, I'm super interested to hear music. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things too where like the meaning has changed from like however I initially meant it. So it's grown or it's transformed for me as I even come into new understandings, and like that's like normies would complain like, why is it so ambiguous, or like, why is it so crowded, or something like that. I'm like,
why not?
it's art, bro. Like you take exactly what you take from it, and I don't put it out there so you would take a certain thing from it. You know what I mean? I make it because that was the journey for me.
And thus is the duality between the artist or the creator and the interpreter, the
Mhm.
person watching what you've created or seeing what you've created, because yeah, then it is up to the interpretation of whoever's engaging with it. But then that is the beauty of it, because it's like, yeah, whatever you want to take away from it, it's up to you. I personally try to look for the positives in everything, and if there's places they could use growth, that's constructive criticism. But there's never anything wrong with a project or a piece. It's all like, this is something I've been saying for years now. It's like, can the people see the vision in what I'm trying to create? Because I know there are a few projects that the mix is rough, or I didn't have the knowledge. I had the vision and the passion to create. So as long as I did it and I got it out there, you either see the vision or you don't, but it's part of the catalog. And it's fun to look back on and have nostalgia of like, oh yeah, I was at this point, I did this, and now growth from it.
Right. It's like comparison is the death of art. It's kind of how to discredit yourself immediately is is part of the journey as well. Like, you know, never scoff at humble beginnings, or, you know, don't look backwards and hate on previous version of yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't help you go forward. Obviously, there's wisdom you can pull from just doing the thing, or, having the critical overlook, but being, you know, like FOMO, or like, yeah, I don't know. There's all kinds of weird paradoxes you can put yourself into by being too critical of yourself. You have to treat that. You have to treat that. That creative, that creator, like a child almost, right? Especially in the flow, like that's why I love Cat Dad, or he just kind of just spits some garbage sometimes, but like
It's all,
so do I. So does, like anyone that puts themselves into like a freestyle situation, is going to have a hiccup, and
oh,
that's kind of the pocket pilots are able to navigate the hiccups most efficiently, and that's also like the kind of people you want within a live band situation, just because the variables, you know what I mean? Like,
oh,
yeah,
and
you want to, yeah.
in the same sense that comparison is the killer of art and the thief of joy, I feel like you also have to take inspiration, and that is like the fertilizer to your own creative power, right? You have to like, it's good to look at other people and see what they're creating, to interpret it in your own way and see how that makes you feel and what you can take and create from it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Oh, oh. Yeah, never mind. Happens
Yeah.
too often.
Oh, good. Yeah, and it's also like the same thing with like being obsessed with purity. You know what I mean? So like if you look at the old alchemists and compare yourself to art, Michelangelo or Da Vinci, you know, and the insane amount of output they had, or the technical prowess that they also brought to the divine, feminine, creative aspect, is just kind of the factorization of that accumulative pursuit of bringing down, or lifting up, etherically.
I
Like,
I feel like this too is a way of doing that all the same, just like music, in a sense of not only being able to see your own growth, a catalog, and see the progression, but also like you said, it is a form of art and creating and expressing, right?
hmm, yeah, yeah. Well, it's like also the amount of respect you can have to pulling yourself out of whatever scenario you're trying to depict, and then without ego displaying what needs to be said or what needs to come out. It's kind of like the dissolution of ego that these guys were also inhabiting. That's why Da Vinci didn't have a problem, or maybe he did have a problem and he alchemically, you know, transmuted that ego scenario where he was comfortable in portraying himself as Judas.
Absolutely. And I guess what was the significance? Because I'm not entirely for the what is the significance of of Judas' character?
He's the one that sold Jesus out to Pontius Pilate, right? Or to the Roman. He's the one who got the gold to tell where Jesus was, or something like that. He was the betrayer. Yeah, he's like if you think of Jesus as the body in which you consume, Judas would have taken that to the you know level to sell the information about Jesus that got him to get captured. And
Oh my.
yeah,
So it's almost like the Assassin's Creed stories are portraying an accurate story in the sense of like all the way back in the day to these individuals, there was some sense of knowledge and some sense of like, because in my mind, hearing that, it sounds like if you take that to a sense of spirituality and what Jesus represented in the sense of like the awakening and consciousness, is that not, is he not embodying himself as somebody trying to maybe discredit or like continue the illusions and stop that message from spreading in a way, like stopping the knowledge and the,
yeah. I
or
mean,
sorry, keeping it hidden in an occult like way, maybe.
yeah. Well, I think, yeah. I don't know exactly what would have gone through Da Vinci's head, right? But like, there's actually 14 characters in the Last Supper, where the painter is the 14th, and there's like, so there's all, it's like juggling the paradox of the repeating cycles, and there's another painter called Jan van Eyck, who's a very famous like fresco painter that had pieces that Hitler was stealing. His uh forget what it's called, but it's the famous painting of the Lamb fresco that has the bottom left panel that is the most stolen piece of art in history.
Oh, it's like trifold one.
Yeah, like let's see. The Ghent altarpiece. That's it. Um, but his Arnolfini portrait, I made a video on because this painting is wild, and especially like the different aspects of the Saturnian matrix and kind of uh, observer qualities that he is able to sneak in, and also the alchemization of the Christ story being represented in the background. There's a mirror, there's a convex mirror that would show essentially the center point of the painting that shows the the angle of the husband and wife from behind, and then the painter position. There's actually two guys. One guy is red and the other guy is blue. So that mirror, so the red and the blue characters in the mirror would also represent the red and the blue that's in the Last Supper, that Jesus wears on his cloak. So like there's the yeah. So I think there was a bit of culture that, alchemical culture during the 1500s, that these, the purest oil painters of that time were practicing and trying to communicate between royal families and noble classes that were able to see the art. And but yeah,
In
it's
association to modern day, like maybe an artist making music, both a blood and a crip, in the sense of like, I'm sure in that sense it would have to be, or maybe it would be somebody in that culture to have more workings on the both sides of it. But yeah, just like, oh, have sakes, I keep I keep wanting to link my thoughts, have one, and I lose the second. That you were talking about.
yeah, it's just no, it's all good. It goes super deep. Like this is literally the rabbit hole.
Yes.
This is the rabbit hole. So the rabbit being associated to, there's a million different paintings that you could point to that depict the rabbit, and especially the importance of the rabbit in uh like childbearing and the divine feminine, or giving birth, and being the pure white bunny, right? That is, you know, as pure as you can get, because it's just eating vegetables and fucking all day, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And the rabbit hole being the discovery of the knowledge and the oh
Well, I think it's like the rabbit hole is this aether scrying, and the amount of information that you can infinitely dissect within the aether that connects to everything else. I think you can distill those archetypes down, right, to portray specific events, or have a whole astrologically contained unit of art that can be presented. And then, like, even if you don't understand every principle or dynamic as astrologically, you can still feel the juice, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And I think that's more of how we perceive the Last Supper, right? Is just like, or the Mona Lisa, like these things have use, whether we understand how it does or does not, and that's kind of the point where we're at now, where we're relearning the actual geometrical principles that are behind the juice.
Yeah. And that's so cool with what you said about the rabbit hole and how it's the infinite dissection of it. Because when I've been meditating with the cat dad streams and Paul's and everybody, when I close my eyes, I picture the waveform of my breath. Okay, inhale, exhale, down, finding the high points and the low points. And last night it even went a step further where I was seeing that wave function. I usually see it from an angle, and then I moved inside it, and there weren't any colors yet. It wasn't as much like a psychedelic experience yet, but I have a good imagination for like three-dimensional shapes and spatial awareness within my head. So I could see like a spinning vortex and kind of imagining. I think there was an old Windows screensaver that did that, where it like went through. I should try and find it on YouTube and try and
I'm,
visualize that.
yeah, I'm convinced. Well, there's a specific Mac screensaver that I have in my memory banks. I couldn't tell you the OS, but it's like you're flying through these purple mountains, right? And like it was so close to how I've been able to, you know, meditate and, astrally kind of travel using the same kind of proportions. And I think through my meditations and my practice, like the geometry of the Great Pyramid comes into play with this uh, kind of hemispherical syncing, right? So in tapping into the aether scrying, like each eye has its own job, right? Where it'd be in my study, like it would be the 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 triangle, the blue triangle, right, would come from the masculine side, and then the feminine would be the red circle. So that also ties into the color depiction of Jesus in the Last Supper, and like ties into a realization I had before my initiation, and then also with Renaissance like art following that principle of having a character in red, in blue, and like depicting Dante as the red mage, and then Merlin as the blue mage, which I've essentially I've channeled both of them at different times, but like it's all kind of lensing of those different aspects of each hemisphere. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was somebody in the call last night in the voice channel that was mentioning how their experience they were talking about. Or were you there last night?
Yeah.
No. Oh, sorry. Okay. They were mentioning their experience on DMT, and how it wasn't. F6. The time doesn't matter. They were mentioning their experience on DMT and how they met the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and the divine masculine took him on a ride basically, and like took him all the way out and said, "Oh, I'll show you this because it doesn't matter. You're just a human." Like just basically joking around and messing with him. But what you just said there with the blue triangle and the tech elves and stuff, maybe the tech elves and the DMT trip are a form of the masculine, whereas the hum and the colors and everything else is the feminine. And that even relates to Chris Bledsoe, his experience where he touched an orb and he communicated with a gray or a being with a triangle on its chest that gave him control of the ship to go around the universe. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. There's it's like infinite amount of tie-ins, like, and I'm just trying to understand this density. I'm not even trying to astrally project. I'm just trying to figure out pareidolia. So, and also the psyop behind pareidolia that is NASA. And
Yeah.
why is NASA the pareidolia gaslighter, right? Because remember, on Mars they took the photo of that mountain that was in the shape of a face, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's a face." You know what I mean?
Or was that
Or
Mars or was that the moon?
uh, it probably was the moon. I don't know.
No,
I don't
because
remember, but
I remember seeing the thing of the face, but the last thing I remember with NASA and Mars was them saying, "Oh yeah, we've been editing the photos this time, making them more red," which
mhm.
then makes me think that oh, they're probably just from here, maybe the, but I don't think we. That's its own. See, I think we could do a whole nother podcast talking about what you just said there and the pareidolia and the gaslighting of it, because I did a few videos on YouTube and we're getting to an hour 40. This has been an
Oh, nice.
amazing conversation as
Yeah,
is.
absolutely.
Where can anybody listening find you?
I am deraj on YouTube, and that's I am deraj.
I will
That's
make
on
sure
YouTube.
to link it in the description. And you're on Discord. Are there any other platforms you've been on, or is YouTube?
I post a lot to Instagram. I'm a deraj.eliathan on Instagram. So
Very nice.
yeah, I have way too much to talk about with all these things too. So I would love to talk about pareidolia sometime, because that's kind of the nail in the head for a lot of these motivations, and why NASA has a tabletop RPG, and
What?
yeah, no, it's and why Jordan Peterson's book on symbolism doesn't include the caduceus in the appendix, at all. He doesn't talk about the caduceus. He's completely obsessed with the snake that eats his own tail, the Ouroboros. So that's the alchemy of the caduceus, which is two snakes representing the male, feminine, and then the concept of the Ouroboros, which is the chaos of one creature that just consumes itself forever. You know what I mean? Instead of right. So
In
yeah, there's
essence, portraying the character he's in a sense showing the character he's portraying in society, perpetuating this idea of eating itself instead of the duality and the like you were talking about Hermes staff, right?
yeah, and also just the culture around taking advantage of divine feminine aspects, and he works for oil companies and the Daily Wire and all these other kind of propagandists. You know what I mean? So come at me, JP. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's go. And JT up here in Canada, that bastard.
Yeah, JP.
But this has been amazing. Thank you for coming on this episode of the podcast, and hopefully we can record another one very soon.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about all this stuff, and yeah, excited to hear more about your journey as well. So